Welcome back, everyone, to another Explainer. Today, we've got something that is just absolutely fascinating to unpack. We are digging into a deeply poetic psychological source text known as the masterpiece of Agent Eve. Now, right off the bat, you might read this and think it's your classic run-of-the-mill espionage thriller, right? You've got secret agents, you've got shadowy con men, high-stakes million-dollar deals. But as we're going to see today, it's actually something much deeper. It's this mesmerizing, incredibly hypnotic text about a Secret Service operative's complete and total descent into romantic obsession. So we're going to break this piece down step by step to understand exactly how the mind of a highly trained spy just completely unravels. I promised her to marry after the mission. I promised her to marry after the mission. I promised her to marry after the mission. Do you hear that rhythm? The text literally beats it into your head over and over again until it completely overtakes the narrative. Okay, let's dive into this because this kind of repetition, it isn't just some clever stylistic choice. It is the very heartbeat of a mind that's rapidly losing its grip on professional reality. And that really brings us to the core question driving today's analysis. How exactly does a young, completely righteous spy's mission just warp into an all-consuming romantic obsession? For those of you who love a really structured psychological deep dive, you are in for a treat. We're going to map out this entire journey. We aren't just looking at a story about espionage here, we are charting a literal psychological breakdown, and we're using the text's own structure to show exactly how professional duty gets totally eclipsed by raw desire. Let's start from the beginning with Part 1, The Idealistic Secret Agent. The text kicks off with this incredibly revealing opening line. It says, "I was young and I wanted to be James Bond." And man, this just brilliantly illustrates our narrator's cinematic fantasy. He's not looking at this like he's just a regular government employee. He's a young guy chasing this glamorous, totally fictional ideal of what it actually means to be a Secret Service agent of England. He wants the glory, the danger, the whole righteous movie hero persona. And you know that youthful naivety? It's the perfect blank canvas for everything that's about to happen. So let's look at the literal facts of his early career. His starting profile is pretty much exactly what you'd expect from a dedicated, hungry operative. He is out there gathering top secret information on a con man. He's going on highly dangerous missions. He's making these everlasting impressions. The text says he proudly declared a promise to his nation to be honest and righteous. So at this stage, his moral compass is pointing perfectly true north. The stakes are definitely high, but his eagerness to prove himself out in the field is honestly even higher. Which brings us to the catalyst. Part 2, Enter Eve, codename Lucy. Now, the text does something super interesting here. It deliberately splits this woman into two totally distinct entities. On one hand, you have Eve. She's this deeply personal, romantic figure, the woman he falls desperately in love with, specifically noting that she was hot and sexy. But then you have Lucy, which is her operational codename. By constantly toggling back and forth between these two names, the author brilliantly blurs the line between the narrator's rigid professional espionage duties and his incredibly personal consuming infatuation. The mission and the romance, they aren't separate anymore. They are literally entangled in the very name he calls her. Now, think about the stark contrast in his loyalties here. It's a massive shift. On one side, we have his initial noble oath, right? A steadfast promise to the nation to be honest and righteous. But then, look at how that oath is completely hijacked by a brand new vow, his promise to Eve to marry after the mission. The text physically replaces his patriotic, state-mandated duty with a deeply romantic one. The psychological pivot is just absolute. To put that into perspective, if we were to quantify his actual mental focus, it is overwhelmingly skewed at this point. We are talking maybe a 5% focus on the actual, literal mission and a whopping 95% of his mental bandwidth consumed entirely by the thought of marrying Eve. It's a perfect representation of the sheer volume of his obsession. The mission isn't the end goal anymore. It's basically just a pesky obstacle standing in the way of his marriage. Let's move to Part 3, the $1 million deal. Pay close attention to the language used to describe the operation at this stage. The narrator isn't being fueled by a sense of duty anymore. Instead, he is navigating the mission fueled by obsession and passion. He's managing a, quote, lot of information, and he's executing what he calls the $1 million deal with enthusiasm and zeal. His fiery, chaotic, emotional state has completely bled into his professional work. The typically cold, calculating world of espionage has just been totally overrun by his frantic, passionate energy. Which leads us directly to this crucial breakthrough moment in the text. Solve the case at once when Lucy became my voice. This is incredibly significant. His love interest, Eve, while acting under her operational alias Lucy, actually becomes his informant. She literally becomes the key to his professional success. So his obsession hasn't ruined the mission. Paradoxically, it's what propelled it forward. He has completely outsourced his own professional agency to the exact woman he is obsessed with.
The tension really ramps up in Part 4, Danger at Christmas Time.
So let's break down the atmospheric elements of this climactic operation. The timing, it all goes down when Christmas was near. But the emotion takes this really dark turn. The text says the adventure was fear. The action requires him to be forcing destiny with confidence, but it also demands a massive amount of sacrifice and compromise. And notice the tools of the trade here? Secret codes were numbers and powerful characters. We get this incredible, sharp contrast between the cold, mechanical, calculating tools of espionage and the incredibly raw, personal fear that he is actively experiencing. The pressure cooker is literally at maximum capacity. Let's step back and look at how this psychological shift builds across our timeline. We started way back at step 1, with that starry-eyed youthful ambition. Then step 2, the ultimate catalyst of meeting Eve. Step 3 took us deep into the frenzied million-dollar deal, peaking at step 4 with that terrifying Christmas climax, which finally brings us to the ultimate destination on our structural arc, the masterpiece. He has transformed completely from a naive recruit into a hardened, utterly obsessed operative. And that brings us to the final act, Part 5, a masterpiece of obsession. The text hits us with this final, heavy realization. When my investigation ended, my life became a masterpiece. My life became a masterpiece. My life became a masterpiece. So the absolute crucial takeaway here is the return of that obsessive triple repetition. Remember earlier how he repeated his promise to marry her over and over? Well, now he's repeating the validation of his own existence. His life is no longer defined by his service to the state, or by justice, or by trying to be James Bond. It is defined entirely, 100%, by the completion of this deeply personal, romantic narrative. Get this, the number 9 is absolutely crucial here. Why 9? Because the phrase, "I promised her to marry after the mission," is repeated exactly 9 times in the broader text we've been analyzing. 9 times. It is an inescapable psychological loop. The narrator's mind is practically trapped in a holding pattern, chanting this romantic mantra to himself over and over again, while this dangerous world of spies and secret codes just swirls chaotically around him.
My life became a masterpiece. That classic, shiny James Bond fantasy we talked about at the very beginning, it has completely dissolved. Because real espionage wasn't glamorous for him, it was terrifying, it was fearful, and it was chaotic. What we are left with is a man who views his life as a work of art, a literal masterpiece, solely because of his consuming love for Eve. The mission itself became an afterthought. The state means absolutely nothing anymore. Eve means everything.
Which leaves us with this final lingering thought. Did the agent truly complete his righteous mission for England, or did his absolute, all-consuming obsession simply rewrite his very definition of success? The text leaves us sitting here wondering if he ever actually conquered the con man, or if his own mind was entirely conquered by Eve. It is a brilliant, totally captivating look at human psychology under immense pressure. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning what truly drives the narratives around you.